Well, we're talking about Prince Edward Island today, and where I will get a lot of the Canadian data, or actually all of it, is from Valerie Tarasuk's research that from the Health Canada data that there was a presentation a few weeks ago. And so if you are interested, it's very easy to find on the internet. And I can give you these slides, Kat, and then you can have them at your disposal. Now, much to my embarrassment, I got that picture off of Wikipedia, but it is accurate, it seems. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, I think just learning about food insecurity in Canada. We'll talk a little bit about a sustainable food system, and then opportunities for involvement and collaboration. And that you all will, I guess, have a better idea than I do. And then I want to show you a video about a program that Fulbright Canada did sponsor in our community, how we help to make our food system a little more sustainable and improve food security. And those are, again, the two themes of this year's World Food Day. So this is a shot of our produce auction. A lot of Amish live in our community, and they sell their produce at an auction twice a week. And so in our community, how a lot of people have become more self-sufficient, which is really the key to food security, is having more resources, is they grow people from gardeners into entrepreneurs, whether it be with value-added products like a canned salsa or pickled this or pickled that, or selling their produce at either a farmer's market or an auction. So the three concepts with food security is food availability. We have ample food available in our community here in Charlottetown and on Prince Edward Island. The question is, do people have access to it? And the only way people can access food is by having the resources to, well, buy it, or the resources to grow it, or whatever. And then food utilization is a concept too, because sometimes people, if they're not healthy, they can't utilize it. If they don't know how to cook, they can't use all this food. Now, even on Prince Edward Island, there are probably students at PEI, or your average person finishing school, that doesn't really know how to boil a potato. So, I mean, it's a cold, hard fact. My mom's 88, and I'm a good cook. We cooked everything at home. Oh, sorry. So one of the biggest controversies my wife and I had is she was raised on scalloped potatoes in a box, and I was raised on scalloped potatoes from potatoes. And so I was like, what is this? And that's not how you go into a marriage often, okay, to be successful. Okay, so what is food security? Well, I just went to the movie last night and watched Captain Phillips, and it's where the guy was abducted by some Somali pirates. Well, ironically enough, they were trying to get money, but they were taking food aid to that country. It was a big load on that ship. But if we went to Somalia, if we're in Charlottetown, or we're in Athens, Ohio, everybody is probably going to equate food security with personal well-being. And so if I have food, I feel better about my health, and I'm probably healthier. So food security is all people at all times having access to enough food for an active, healthy life. And that's really the accepted definition within a few words in North America. And then this includes the ready availability of nutritionally adequate, safe foods, and the assured ability to acquire them in socially acceptable ways. And so, when somebody is food insecure, let me turn down this volume until we start to do that. When somebody is food insecure, this is usually what they're showing. They lack access to food. They depend on assistance programs, whether that is getting, one of the buckets of food from the Salvation Army here, or going to a food bank, something like that. They sometimes skip meals. They substitute nutritious foods with less expensive alternatives, and they seek assistance, again, from food banks in addition to some other programs. Now, when I was growing up, I was raised in an impoverished home, and so my mother was a very good planner, but one of the programs we had in the United States were free school lunch tickets. And so I remember distinctly in 1972 when I started to get these. My dad was injured, and all of a sudden my lunch tickets started to look different than everybody else's at school because mine were free. So rather than use the same tickets, they had special tickets. I don't know why, but that's how they did it. And so what we started to do was depend on this assistance program so that the kids in our house could eat. I don't even know if my dad knew that I was getting free school lunch. You know, mothers, they have a way to make things happen. Okay, so what do the most recent data tell us about Canadians? Well, the good news is this: 87.7% of Canadian households, the most recent data is from 2011, are food secure. So at any time during the year, almost 88% of Canadians didn't really worry about where their food was coming from. They didn't worry about having enough money for food. They didn't skip a meal because they didn't have money. But unfortunately, there were 12.3% of households that were food insecure. And this is 1.6 million Canadian households. Now, if you're wondering what's happening in the United States, we're closer to 15%. And so our food insecurity situation is worse. But there are definitely territories and provinces that have a lot worse food insecurity than 12.3%. So what does this mean numbers-wise? 2.7 million adults, 1.1 million children less than 18. And so, when we say they're food insecure, they were uncertain of having or unable to acquire enough food due to insufficient money or resources. Now, in Canada, you'll hear it called income-related food insecurity. And I think that's good because it shows that it relates to resources. And so that's one thing to remember. Now, we're not saying people are using the resources they have wisely, but we're not saying they're not using them wisely either. But I think it's due to poverty. Okay, so if you're a picture person, these are the pictures. And again, this is from Valerie Tarasuk's lab in Toronto. So Health Canada doesn't analyze this data anymore. University researchers have to get funding in order for these numbers to come out. So Health Canada used to do it, but now they don't. Okay, so here it is. Again, this is that 12.3% piece of the pie. Now you'll notice there are three little sections here. So what that is basically showing is, so we have marginal food insecurity. So what does that mean? I put the definitions here. These are people who are worrying about whether their food is running out. So not necessarily do they have shortages of food, but they're buying low-cost food and they're worrying that they won't have money. Now we are finding, the research is showing that this group maybe is the group that has health problems. And now Canada doesn't have a poverty measure like the United States does, but we're finding that people who are marginally food insecure, it's almost a better predictor of some health outcomes. And Dr. Tarasuk did mention that in her talk when she was here a few weeks ago about virtually every health condition. Food insecurity is a negative predictor of that. Okay, and so moderate food insecurity. So this group of people, they are having a shortage in quantity or quality of food. So I'm not saying that Kraft dinner is bad. Okay, I'm not saying that. I like Kraft dinner. In fact, if it weren't for Kraft dinner and milk, my 11-year-old probably wouldn't have survived as long as he has. Now, but Kraft dinner is cheap, it fills up your kids, and yet it probably doesn't necessarily have some of the nutrients that kids and adults need. And so people are depending upon these low-cost foods to feed their family. And then severe food insecurity, and that's a really small piece of the pie. These are people that are skipping meals. These are people that are losing weight. And so we all have pictures of, let's say the Holocaust, where we know that when people were coming out of those camps, they were very thin and emaciated. That was very severe starvation. And so we see that in severe food insecurity, but actually, especially in the moderate and marginal, we're seeing other health problems, more like obesity and overweight and things like that. Because people have enough calories, they just don't have enough nutritious food to eat. Okay, so what are some coping strategies? People eat less varied diets. And this is a little bit of a rehash. They participate in assistance programs and they get emergency food. Now, are there people that show up at food banks that don't need it? Oh, absolutely. But actually, I think people that show up truly need it. And I know our family, we used to help pass out cheese and butter. That was an assistance program in the US 30, 40 years ago. And, but people got free cheese and free butter. Okay, again, if you like pictures, here's a picture. So you can see that the worst food insecurity in Canada is really taking place here in Nunavut in one of the territories. But most food insecure people live in Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, and British Columbia. But if you look here at the Maritime provinces, really, we have some of the worst food insecurity. Prince Edward Island, 15.4%, so that is definitely higher than 12. And then Nova Scotia, and so on, 17.1, 16.5. But look at this here. Newfoundland, Labrador, the best food insecurity. But we know their economy is improving and so on and so forth, so that's probably one of the big reasons it seems. So only 10.6%. So, okay, now these I know you can't read, and I'll give these to Kat, and but it has all of the numbers again from the proof, and it just shows the breakdown of all of them. But if we have this line here, you can see that the provinces that are higher than the average are going to be PEI, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and then YT, Yukon. Is that what that stands for, right? And then Nunavut, and Northwest Territories. But I mean, they're really bad off here.